Hello, and welcome to Agile Project Management 101, Running Meetings for a Scrum Sprint. My name is Blake, and I will be your course instructor. Once the course is finished, you will be able to define the terms Agile, Scrum, and Sprint, identify the components of the core meetings in a Scrum Sprint, and apply techniques for running the meetings effectively and efficiently. So let's start out with defining Agile. What is Agile with regards to software development and the related fields to software development? According to the Agile Alliance, Agile is the ability to create and respond to change. It is a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent environment. Agile software development is an umbrella term for a set of frameworks and practices based on the values and principles defined in the Agile Manifesto. So to unpack this lengthy definition, let's just take this one step at a time. The first piece regarding Agile talks about responding to change. In traditional projects, you have dozens of requirements that are identified at the onset of a project, and usually a massive outline is defined for what the project should entail. But what happens when stakeholder needs change in the middle of a project? What if technology drastically changes after you've developed things on top of that existing technology? What if something goes wrong and the approach that was adopted at the beginning of the project stops being viable? For those reasons, Agile exists to help manage projects in uncertainty, which leads into the next part of the definition, succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent environment. And that's really what Agile does. Spending millions to have a project fail is obviously costly, but it usually is incredibly frustrating and can lead to the loss of market share or more when it comes to a business environment. The next portion of the definition notes that Agile is not necessarily defined as a single thing, but is a collection of frameworks and practices. Kanban, Scrum, and extreme programming are all implementations of the Agile umbrella. Scrum is one of the more popular approaches, and it is the one we will be focusing on in this course. So what is Scrum? According to Scrum.org, Scrum is a lightweight framework that helps people, teams, and organizations generate value through adaptive solutions for complex problems. In essence, Scrum is a way of managing development. Scrum utilizes something called sprints to achieve the aforementioned goals. Sprints are relatively short lengths of time in which a set of tasks are completed. Now, typically, sprints run from 1 to 4 weeks, and within that time, there are a handful of different types of meetings that occur to facilitate engagement between those creating the products, or the developers, and the stakeholders that influence the product. Sometimes this is the customer, sometimes these are internal stakeholders, etc. So essentially, Scrum is a way to apply Agile through the use of things like sprints, stories, and other items. And so we need to cover those other items before diving in. And the components of a sprint happen to be a few different things. The first is the backlog. And the backlog is the list of all of the items that are potentially being considered for development or creation. Think of this as the kind of long to-do list that we mentioned in the traditional or waterfall approach above. Now, instead of trying to accomplish every item in the backlog and defining a time frame to all of them at the onset of the project, instead we're going to utilize a Kanban board to define what should be included in the sprint. And again, those sprints are 1 to 4 week windows. Now, this is often called a sprint board when it is being utilized for managing a sprint, and Kanban boards can really be utilized to track any type of work. And these boards are a visual representation of the work that is being done by whom and what the status is. These are often called swim lanes as well. And again, when a Kanban board is used to track a sprint, it's often called a sprint board. you would essentially take items from the backlog, place them onto the sprint board to define them as being in that specific sprint. Again, instead of defining every single sprint and every single amount of time for each task, you take things one sprint at a time to be able to quickly and effectively handle these tasks and be agile in adapting to how to respond to the needs of stakeholders, technology, and environment. These two pieces, the backlog and the sprint board, are tools to make the sprint run effectively and the meetings associated with the sprint go smoothly. And the most common meetings we will discuss are the sprint planning meeting, daily stand-ups, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. We will also go through a few activities to help further your understanding of these meetings, and at the end, discuss general best practices of meeting management. I hope you enjoy this course.